Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you another review, and it's another entry in Oscar reviews. Today I'm reviewing a film that I heard of years ago and I've seen a couple times. This seems to be a film that the more I watch it, the more I like it, and the more I appreciate how it was shot. And it also makes me even feel more for the real life person this film was based on. And that would be Joseph Merrick, the Elephant Man, which is the title of the film, The Elephant Man. It is a 1980 film directed by David Lynch and I believe produced by Brook Films, or have something to do with them, but I could be wrong. It is based on The Elephant Man and Other Reminiscences by Frederick Treves, who was the doctor that treated Merrick in the film, played by Anthony Hopkins. Now the film 8.3 on IMDb and a 93 with the audience on Rotten Tomatoes and an 89 with the critics. And I have to say, after rewatching the film, I will agree with that. May not be a film that's everyone's cup of tea, but obviously seems more people like it and enjoy it just based on those ratings. But even though I don't agree with the ratings all the time, I'm just saying that. And this is the consensus on Rotten Tomatoes. Lynch's relatively straight second feature finds an admirable synthesis of compassion and restraint in treating its subject, and features outstanding performances by John Hurt and Anthony Hopkins. I will agree with that. Apparently I'm not the only one, because Hurt was nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role. I'm actually kind of surprised that Hopkins wasn't, but at least he won 10 years later for Silence of the Lambs, which ironically, what got him the role in that film was his role in this film. I forget who said it. I think it was the director or one of the casting people. They said that they were inspired to have him play the evil doctor by his portrayal of a good doctor, which just shows how versatile of an actor he is. He can play a psychotic evil doctor pretty well, and then a kindly good doctor. He even played Hitler once. That's a different movie. It was also nominated for art direction, set direction, costume design, director, film editing, music, and screenplay. Sadly, it was not there was no makeup nominee, because this was before the makeup Oscar was awarded. But I'll say, if they had a makeup category at the time, I think this film should have won it. But I believe this, if I remember correctly, I think this is one of the films that actually led to the makeup category being developed. I could be wrong on that. Oh yeah, it was Mel Brooks who was the executive producer. It was actually Brooks being impressed by Eraserhead that got Lynch this job. But of course, like with The Fly, he wanted to keep his name off the marketing lest people expect a comedy, which that would have been the last thing that would have been good for marketing. Mel Brooks presents The Elephant Man. You know, people would have been like, "Yeah, it's The Elephant Man, it's The Elephant Man." Yeah, what the heck is this? Now, the makeup that Hurt had to wear for the film was actually made from casts from Merrick's body, which had been kept in the Royal London Hospital's private museum, which is a good idea because it made the makeup authentic. And even though Hurt did complain a little bit about how he had to move in it, it was more, I guess, because of the demands of acting and all that makeup, and with how the makeup is designed, really based on how Merrick had to live. I can imagine it. He actually told his wife they're close to making me hate acting. That's more of a paraphrase, really, but I could see why, and that's a good thing they let him work alternate days on the film. And I'm surprised the film didn't win any of the awards. It should have at least won costume design in score, because the score by John Morris is very good, and it has kind of a carny feel to it, which for a film about a character who worked in the freak show kind of fits. The score is also kind of eerie. It's like da na 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 na. That's kind of the main theme, and it kind of sounds like it's being played on bells or kind of an instrument like that. Now, another thing I must note is, even though the film claims that it is supposed to be historically accurate, it's not a lot. I mean, there is some stuff that did in the film that did happen, like a scene later on in the film where Joseph, called John in the film for some reason, is at a train station and they pull off his mask and chase him. That actually happened, but that happened before he went to the London hospital. The people that he worked with in the freak show were actually kind to him. In fact, the character who he works for in the freak show is based more on a character from Oliver Twist than it is on the real people. I can see why, because you do kind of need a bad guy in this film, which the true story could have sold itself, but adding a bad guy I think makes you feel a little bit more for Merrick and makes you feel a little bit more sorry for him, which from that I can understand why they did it. Let's see. I don't think that guy actually did sell the stuff. They changed some of the order of stuff. It's all more for dramatic purposes, which, if you're a purist to history, you're like, yeah. But even though I do enjoy history and do like them to at least try to keep as historically accurate as they can, while trying to balance out constructing a film, it doesn't bother me here because of how the film does work. Now, the film begins with London hospital surgeon Frederick Treves finding Merrick in a Victorian freak show in London's East End, where he is kept by a man named Bites. Now, his head is always hooded, and his owner thinks he's retarded because of how he is. One day, he's paid by Treves for private viewing and also to bring him to the hospital for exams. He shows Merrick to his colleagues and highlights all of his deformities, especially noting that he sleeps with his head on his knees because if he laid down he would asphyxiate, which is eventually how Merrick died. Now, of course, on Merrick's return, Bites beats the crap out of him, and then he calls Treves, and Treves takes him to the hospital after noting that this is not from a fall, partially because of how the injuries are and partially because of a little boy who works with Bites notices that the boy's kind of looking at Bites in a weird way. Now, John is quarantined by Treves and the mother's head, who is the matron nurse. And of course, as you can imagine from Merrick's appearance, a lot of the staff cringe. I mean, when one of the female nurses first goes into the room he's in to give him porridge, she screams, which is the scene in the trailer, which I guess you could shows anyone's honest reaction to seeing him. Now, the hospital governor, Mr. Cargom, is against having Merrick there because they don't want incurables, as it says in the trailer. Am I to assume that he is ultimately incurable? Yes, sir. This hospital doesn't accept curables. It's kind of sad, though, but Cargom does eventually change his mind when he does meet Merrick, which I'm not going to go into at all, but let's just say it's a very touching scene how he eventually changes his mind. Now, eventually, Merrick gets into the paper and becomes sort of a sensation. He meets Treves' wife, which is a very emotional scene, and then he even meets a actress, which I'm looking for the name of the actress here, Madge Kendall, who is played by Brooks's late wife, Anne Bancroft. Now, I haven't seen all of her performances, but I thought she was very honest in her portrayal of this actress in there. And it's a very touching scene between them where she gives him a copy of Romeo and Juliet, and they do read a little bit from it. And you could tell that she's seen behind the deformities and seeing the real person in there, just like Treves and Cargom are. It's a very touching scene. And I have to say, if there's any moral to the story, is don't judge. You know, it's the age-old story: don't judge a book by its cover. Which I know at one point in Merrick's real life, he did wish he could go to the hospital for the blind, so he could try to find a woman that would love him for who he was. I wish they could have somehow worked that into the film. It would have been interesting. Even if they had actually had him gone, that would have been very interesting. Granted, I don't think in real life he did, but it would have been a very touching scene. I mean, even if it was deleted, it would be an interesting deleted scene to watch, in my opinion. I know there's a play of the Elephant Man out there, but if they ever do another one, that'd be a nice little historical, a little historical deviation to include. Now, the ending, I'm not going to spoil. It does kind of segue into how he dies. That's all I'm saying about it. But it does have an interesting way of ending with a quote by, it's supposed to be supposedly spoken by Merrick's mother from the poem Nothing Will Die by Lord Tennyson. It's an interesting ending. And it really, even though I haven't seen Lynch's first film, it does kind of have his little trademark there, as does the opening with a woman in silhouette and an elephant. Now, of course, the stuff with Bites and a night porter who works in the hospital. This is where the parts that really deviate come into the film. You know, Bites getting the Elephant Man back, thanks to the night porter abusing his position and letting people in. And of course, this is kind of hinted at in the trailer. People say pay money to see a monster, Mr. Treek. I collected. You're the monster. You're the freak. All that. And it makes you not like the porter. The first time you see the porter, you already know you're not going to like him. But as he makes money off of Merrick this way, you don't like him anymore. And then, of course, Bites, we already hate him by this point. He's beating up Merrick with that stick. Him kidnapping him. You really do want Merrick to at least, even though it probably hurt Merrick, you at least want him to try to at least hit him with that big deformed hand of his. But, you know, Bites has had that power in the relationship, so he's going to be a little scared of him, even though he's had Treves to help him. And you're actually very glad when he does get away from him. That's all I'm going to go into it. This, as you can tell, is a drama that does bring up a lot of emotion. If you know someone who's had a physical deformity, probably even more so. I personally don't know anyone who has had a physical deformity. The closest would be people who have slight mental deficiencies. Not in a bad way, I'm just saying. You know, that they, require patient people. That'd be the appropriate word for it. Of course, look at me. I'm not gonna judge people on that. Now, nothing else to say about the film. The film kind of just speaks for itself. And as you can tell from how I've talked about it, I think it is an excellent film. I know it's been released on Blu-ray. I don't know if it has a special edition one. Apparently, it was released as part of the David Lynch Lime Green box, which includes several interviews with Hurt and Lynch, and a Joseph Merrick documentary. If it doesn't have special features on its own, it'd be interesting to maybe transport the special features in there. Now, it was made on a budget of $5 million, which for the 80s, I guess would be like a small or medium. And you can sort of tell in some of it, because it seems like most of the budget that was for elaborate stuff went to the costumes and, of course, the makeup. I don't know if the actors agreed to small salary or they couldn't demand a lot of them, except maybe Bancroft, who I guess didn't want to do it because I think she might have been the only. I think Bancroft and Hopkins might have been the only ones with the tenure enough to pull for a large salary demand, but maybe out of respect for the source material they didn't. I know Bancroft probably wouldn't have done it anyway because of the size of her role and the fact that her husband's the producer. And it made $26 million, which is a pretty good size gross. That's 5 times the gross. I don't know if that $5 million includes this advertisement, because the trailer, if you watch it, is actually an interesting trailer. Now, my rating for The Elephant Man, all honesty, I'd have to say 4.5 out of 5. If you are a fan of David Lynch's work, definitely give it a watch if you haven't. If you're a fan of Hopkins, Hurt, Bancroft, or the other actors like Sir John Gielgud, Wendy Hiller, Freddie Jones, who plays Bites, Helen Ryan, among others, I'd say definitely give it a watch.